Money never sleeps, pal.
Hey there, this is Pete Townsend from Norio Ventures, and welcome to Money Never Sleeps, a podcast that looks inside the head of entrepreneurs and at the crossover of startups, enterprise, finance, technology, and life as we know it. This episode of Money Never Sleeps is sponsored by PAT FinTech, the training partner that demystifies fintech and digital finance for financial services professionals. We've got Chris Burge on the show this week, who is a co-founder and CEO of Spark Crowdfunding here in Ireland. Spark is an equity crowdfunding platform helping Irish companies raise new funds from a vast pool of private investors. I first came across Spark when I was working on a crowdfunding platform project last year, and I thought I had it all figured out at that point. What a difference a conversation with the founder of a business makes to how you understand their strategy, though. This may seem obvious, but with any business, there's usually an untold story as to why the founder was determined to get their product to market, and all you got to do is ask. With that, let's spark this one up and get moving with Chris Burge and Spark Crowdfunding on this week's episode of Money Never Sleeps.
Money never sleeps, pal.
Here we go again, recording from the home studio with Chris Burge, co-founder and CEO at Spark Crowdfunding in Ireland. Before starting Spark in 2017, Chris had a long career in engineering, operations, and energy, which led him into crowdfunding as it does. With that, welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks very much. Good to be here.
Awesome to have you here. We got Owen here as well. And
Yes.
when Owen suggested to me, Chris, that we bring you on, I was waiting with bated breath as I have an insane curiosity about crowdfunding in Ireland. And so, Owen, my line better not snap this time like it did a couple of weeks ago.
Better not.
In the middle of the interview. I caught up with Brian McMahon today from Expert Dojo, who we had a chat with 2 weeks ago, Chris, and in the middle of that interview, Owen kept it running. It looked like I was off, but to me, I was still on, and I was sitting there like, guys, you're not letting me get a word in edgewise. And I'm like, what the hell? And we had turned off the phones to avoid interference. So anyway, long story short. So like I said, very eager to talk to you about this, and I'll tell you why when we kind of get into the main part of the conversation here tonight. And again, for all the listeners, it is 9:07 p.m. The last two times we recorded it was at 9:11 p.m., which is not a good sign. But those chats did go well. So, Chris, again, thanks for coming on. I did a little intro for you there at the beginning, but for all of our listeners, can you please share your backstory and how you got to this point? Yeah?
Sure, absolutely. Well, as you said, I'm an engineer. I did my primary degree in engineering and was an engineer for most of my career. And as time progressed, I moved over here to Ireland as 20 odd years ago now. And there's not much manufacturing here in Ireland, so I kind of then moved into an operational type of kind of position with a company. And was doing that for 5 or 6 years, and I never really thought that I was going to progress really in the business. It was a very small business. The owner manager, wasn't going to retire anytime soon. So I started looking around as to what else I might be able to do. So I actually did a master's in energy management, and that took me into the energy field. And so I was an energy consultant for a good 5 or 6 years, and enjoyed that very much so. But it still wasn't really kind of pushing all my buttons. And in that time, I was kind of looking around, and the internet was kind of growing and growing and growing. This is kind of in the 2012 type area, and I'd done very small amounts of investing, earlier on in my career when I had a bit more disposable cash, and I mean very small here. But it cost you as much in third party fees, i.e., paying either legal fees or any other fees that went along with it, as it was to actually put the money in. So when I saw the crowdfunding kind of growing in the States and in the UK, I thought, okay, this is going to go. And I wondered why it didn't exist here in Ireland. So myself and a friend of mine, we sat down and went, okay, well, listen, we both kind of were, as I say, very much part-time investors, but nevertheless invested and knew a little bit about it. And we went, okay, well, how does this work? How can we do it? Do we, and so we put a platform together, and we 3 years later, we find ourselves sitting here, and that's how it started.
Wow. Okay. I get that. So, just realizing that there was a gap in the market, but also your own personal experience about doing a couple investments, seeing how hard it was, seeing how it was expensive it is to do that. Was there, putting those two together, the gap in the market, your own personal problem that you wanted to solve? How did you start thinking about, okay, how am I going to get Irish startups really to come onto the platform, right? What was that kind of point of we're going to get this moving?
Well, we knew what we wanted to do, but with a two-sided marketplace like this is, and as any other two-sided marketplace, you have to. It's a very difficult way of getting the ball rolling, and that initial inertia or lack of it rather is very difficult. So you have to kind of get businesses on one side and investors on the other. And trying to persuade both of them that you've got enough of the other in order to actually make this successful is a difficult conundrum. But I've been here, as I said, for 20 years now, so I had a good number of business contacts, and many of whom were investors anyway. So bringing them on board with the promise that we will have clients at some stage wasn't too difficult an ask. And we did that, and we kind of through our own contact base, which is fairly substantial. Both me and other people that I knew close by who could leverage off that, to get them onto the platform, knowing that there would be, as I say, companies coming along soon enough that would need some investment. Now, not everybody was going to invest in every company, of course, but nevertheless, we built up a big enough investor base there, ready to get the companies in, and so that's how we got it going, really.
Chris, did you feel that the market was ready for it? Because I suppose from an Irish market point of view, it had been the same for a number of years, the same kind of funds in the market, the same kind of, obviously the likes of Enterprise Ireland providing a certain type of support. You had identified a gap, which I'm sure lots of people were aware of, but did it feel like the companies and the investors were kind of ready to come on board with it?
They were. I mean, the banks obviously at this stage were basket cases, as they still are in many cases. They just are not lending to the young startup companies. They wax lyrical about how good they are and how much money they're putting into these companies, but in reality, they're not. So we knew that there was a problem from that side. Most of these companies are too small for VCs, and so it really was kind of reliant on private equity. And of course, again, because of their own limited contact base, they don't have access to all these private equity people or high net worth necessarily. So we knew that there was an area that we could fill that could actually bridge that gap, if you like, and that's what we found. And so yes, it was. We knew that there was we thought that there was a market for us. We knew that there was a gap. We just had to kind of back ourselves and go for it, and we did. And as I say, 2.5 years later, we are where we are, and a successful, relatively successful, young company helping Irish companies get funded.
Absolutely.
And how, maybe talk about that success piece in terms of where you're at now with, the number of kind of projects that have been on the platform and the amount of money raised.
Yeah, well, the last few months and since kind of COVID, it's been a bit of a whirlwind, really. Yeah, we've had now, I think it's now 17 companies gone through the platform, raised well in excess of 3.5 million. Probably touching on 4 million now, and many companies successfully gone off and started the first bit of their business with a chunk of change in their pocket, ready to grow the business and to grow into new markets and get some return for the investors who back them as well.
And do you see? I kind of commonly use the example on some of the UK platforms of the success of Monzo with crowdfunding. Right, where I think they raised up to something like ridiculous number of.
It was 20 million pounds in 2 hours.
20 million pounds in 2 hours. I haven't done that much work in 2 hours in my life, right? So and what I noticed was that any products that are obviously B2C, like Monzo is a B2C business, Brewdog Brewery in Scotland is obviously a B2C business. When you have a product that someone can sign up to, that someone can make their own, create a bit of a fan club there, it seems to lead to higher crowdfunding raises and successes. Have you noticed anything yet so far with the 17 that you've had on the platform on the differences between kind of product-led B2C type businesses or others, and what has been more successful?
Well, if you look at the campaigns that are live at the moment, we've got a B2C company called Moby who have just smashed through 600,000 of a raise. Now, with different orders of magnitude here for the UK ones, the likes of Monzo and Brewdog, of course, but nevertheless, we still think that that's an amazing win for these guys. So that is a B2C.
That is a large round in
Absolutely,
in the Irish market
absolutely,
context.
yes, we're very happy that we've managed to get that, and it's still live and then live for another 20 days, I think it is. So who knows where it's going to get to? Nevertheless, it's been we're very happy with it, and so are Moby, and it's been a great success for them so far. Obviously a B2C company, but we've done plenty of B2Bs in the past as well, perhaps not to the same level. Well, definitely not to the same level because Moby's the biggest one we've done thus far. But nevertheless, of the 17, I'd say probably only about 5 or 6 of them have been B2C. So the others have all been B2B, of course, and therefore, we've still managed to raise money successfully for them. And so, yes, I do see the argument that a B2C like Brewdog will kind of raise way in excess because lots of small investments from thousands and thousands of investors will get there, and you'll get a large amount of money in, of course. But nevertheless, smaller numbers of people, but putting in larger amounts for a B2B, equally is valid, of course.
And do you think then that maybe that highlights, because I suppose people would look at crowdfunding maybe and think of the B2C model, it's for customers, people who really support a business. But I suppose maybe what that's showing then is that it's the investors who want the return, and they're investing in a solid business. And actually what the platform is doing is making that easier for them.
Absolutely that. And, and we talk to our investors, all the time, of course. And, most of those are not necessarily want to invest in B2C. There's a good proportion of them that have actually indicated that B2B is their preferred, investment route. But also we've done a couple of private raises as well. When I say private raises, where we've put a campaign onto the site, but it's been in a private mode, so it's not actually been available to the public as such. And the reason they've done that is because they've got their own kind of cohort of investors in the background, and they're just using our platform and our mechanism to corral all of those, maybe 20 or 30 investors into one vehicle. And our legal mechanism is very straightforward now, and we've done it now almost 20 times, and it works very well. And it's a cookie cutter approach, and it works well for that type of corralling of a number of investors into one group.
I like that. I like that a lot. And I think, looking at the size of the Irish population, the size of the Irish market, you've got a lot more diversity here in terms of, compared to in the UK, where the overwhelming part of the UK population are going to be those that would put in, 100 to 200 to 300, 500 maybe. In Ireland, when you are positioning an investments platform and just through the network and the contacts that you have, you're going to be taking in a much wider span of potential investors here. Like you said, someone who just wants to use it to have a home base for their investors on a private raise, right? I think that's pretty cool. I hadn't thought about that aspect of what you're doing.
Just one point on that though, Pete. We're not just for Irish investors. We do have, it works out to be about 82% of them are Irish or residing here in Ireland, at least anyway. We've got about 10% from the UK, and the other 8% are literally dotted around the globe. We had an investment from Taiwan just 2 days ago. Why from Taiwan? I don't know. And I don't know how they found us, because we certainly don't do any advertising over there. But that's just, the word gets out, and we have investments, and we've had ones from Sweden, from Australia, from Singapore, from Canada, from, Chile, so there's a big spread, if you like, although of course there's only ones and twos of people in those places.
And does that add some complexity then on the kind of operational side with some of those international investors?
Not really. We obviously have to do our KYC on them. So know your client, know your customer, and the anti-money laundering kind of checks that we have to do. But but other than that, no, they just still have to put money into our escrow account. And after that, it's fine. They're just another shareholder. They just happen to live in a different country. So there's no further complication for that, though. So no, it's quite simple. It's quite straightforward and simple.
Okay. One of the reasons that I was obviously so excited to talk to you about this, Chris, is that last year I got deeply involved into a potential crowdfunding project that never launched and looked considerably at your model, right, as a foundation for this and as a learning experience and learning exercise. And I learned quite a lot about it. And you've said it already. It's a very straightforward model. And I would fully agree. It's an incredibly straightforward model. So, got very close to it. The other piece of it that I got close to was a regulatory side. I have regulation in my blood from 25 years in the financial services industry, and I can't get rid of it no matter how hard I try. And just noticed that recently the European Parliament announced that it has adopted the European regulation on crowdfunding service providers, at least provisionally, right? It now needs to be adopted after a second reading, published in the official journal, so on and so forth, and will go into force 20 days later. We're looking at probably end of 2021 or early 2022. Any thoughts on how this may change your business or impact your business from that point forward?
Absolutely. Well, listen, we've known this has been coming for some time, and we've been keeping a very keen eye out on for the progress of this. And so, yes, we do think it's going to make a difference, and very positive one. I mean, it will put regulation into the market, of course, and it will make everybody, a little bit more comfortable with the whole mechanism. I think they can be comfortable as it is now, anyway, because we do adopt many of the rules that are already in place for that the FCA are putting into the UK, anyway. But nevertheless, to have it here in our own territory. Absolutely, I think it's going to be great. It's going to give us another badge of acceptability, and bring it on. I think we're certainly ready for it, and I think the market will be ready for it as well.
This episode of Money Never Sleeps is sponsored by PAT FinTech, demystifying fintech and digital finance for financial services professionals. PAT FinTech enable financial services professionals to transform their capabilities into the digital age, with dedicated virtual training programs geared towards those that can develop, deliver, and monitor optimally customized user experiences balanced by appropriate governance, control, and oversight. To learn more about PAT FinTech, go to moneyneversleeps.ie/PAT FinTech. Just shifting gears a bit, can you tell us about how the day-to-day life of an energy consultant differs from that of a crowdfunding platform operator, right?
It is quite different, as you can imagine. I use a lot less maths in my current position than I did in my energy management position. But, as a consultant, you were kind of, dashing from plant A to plant B to commercial building A to commercial building B. And I was literally all over the country. And so I was spending an awful lot of time in the car, going to do audits on various kind of facilities, whether it be down in Ringaskiddy or over in Galway or over in the IFSC or wherever it happened to be. But also overseas, I did quite a bit of work overseas. I did some work with, it was the UN, so it's a division of the UN called UNIDO, which is the International Development Organization. So I did some work in Russia, and I did some work in West Africa as well, which was very enjoyable to go and visit these places as well, which was good. But no, very different. I mean, I barely kind of get up from my desk now, so it's a lot more sedentary, which is not so good on the old waistline. But nevertheless, it's still very enjoyable, and I love talking to both the businesses and the investors as well. On a regular basis. I still do a lot of that to see how they are and what we can do for them and how we can create a campaign that will be successful for them and also to the investors to how what they can do with their money and how we work and how the EIS all works and all of these good things that we do now.
How, I suppose, to follow on from Pete's question, and how do you think your kind of skill set has evolved in this role?
Well, for energy management, energy consulting, I only there was only me in the business, so it was so that was easy. I could control my own time frame, scale, how hard I worked or how hard I didn't work, and so I didn't really have to do very much other than kind of look over the finances every once in a while just to make sure bills were being paid and I wasn't kind of spending too much. But now, of course, it's a very different kettle of fish. I've got to, juggle a number of campaigns. I've got to juggle a number of, hundreds of thousands of investors ultimately that we need to keep happy. Trying to get our webinars up and running and making sure that we are promoting the companies properly. So it's very different. How did I develop the skill set for it? Well, maybe it was all there under the surface, bubbling underway before I kind of went from my consultancy into this. But no, I love it. We've got a great team now. But no, it's a different skill set. But one that I've really embraced and I really enjoy it.
I'm going to ask you a question that we didn't give you a heads up on advance, just because I've been thinking about this one a lot lately, but the behavioral psychology of B2C, right? Which is getting the campaigns out there, the marketing campaigns to bring investors in, right? To make them aware of your platform, to know that you're there, to know that there may be the types of companies that they might like to invest in, or perhaps they've never invested before and they may want to throw in a few hundred, whatever, right? How have you thought about that? Right, in terms of the user acquisition or I won't call them investor acquisition because they're not investors yet when you bring them on, but just getting folks onto your platform to provide an audience for the companies that you're running campaigns for.
Yeah, we've got a number of different ways that we do this, but we obviously are quite proliferate on our social media, so Twitter, LinkedIn, less the Facebook and Instagram, but nevertheless, Twitter and LinkedIn are probably primary sources for us. But the best one for us is PR, getting our names into a newspaper somehow. So we spend an awful lot of time, writing press releases, trying to get journalists to write a bit about us, to go on podcasts, and to get the name Spark out there, and because it's amazing that when you're in your own business, your whole world is around Spark and Spark and Spark and Spark, and then you speak to somebody and they go, "Oh, I've never heard of you. What do you do again?" And you're thinking, how on earth do you not know about us?
Yeah, so, I know.
So there's many, many people who've never heard of us, and many who never will. But there's obviously a cohort of people that we want to get in front of, and these are, they're people who've got disposable income, whether that be €100 of disposable income or 100,000's worth of disposable income. And we need both. We don't just need to kind of have the high net worths. We need to have a whole gambit of them. Because of course, the companies who are coming to us, they want a big spread of investors. They don't want just two high net worths putting a chunk of money into their company. They're coming to us because they want to get their name out, because if they are B2C, then of course that's exactly what they want. But even if they're B2B, if Mrs. Smith down the road has invested into a company, a B2B company, if she's now got skin in the game, so she's going to talk to her friends about this service that this company provides. And if that kind of links to somebody who then goes, okay, yeah, I'm actually looking for that service, I'm going to. So now the story has grown, and there's somebody else who knows about XYZ Limited and the services they provide. And that makes Mrs. Smith's investment grow, because there's more people now becoming clients, and it's good for the XYZ Limited as well, because they now have another client coming in. So it's a win-win from everybody. So that's why everybody wants a big cohort of investors in there. So as I say, we need everybody. So from the person who can put in €100 to the person who can put in 100,000 euros.
Yeah, that's the power of the network, right? Where you've got, and like you said at the beginning, two-sided network, where you've got investors that, if they have a positive experience, will spread the word. You will have investors spreading a positive experience about those that they've invested in, right? And that word gets around, and they think, well, and that picks up and says, well, how do those folks raise money? Really interesting. And it's there's a real science to that. And one of your favorite authors, what's his name? Malcolm Gladwell, right?
Yep.
That does a lot of writing about these types of things. And it's fascinating to me. And I'm looking at this a lot more these days with some folks challenging me recently to think more about the B2C side than the B2B side that I've historically been engaged with. B2B to C is even harder, right? Because you got to solve two problems there. You got to solve the B problem and the C problem. Fun stuff. I get where you're coming from now, and I get your diverse background, doing a lot of different things all the time in your history before Spark, and probably not doing too much of the same activity for more than an hour or two at a time, right? And now that you are looking at all these campaigns and trying to help a number of different companies on the same day and jumping around from one to the next, it's kind of a similar pattern there, right? And that it sounds like it works for you. Can you think about maybe in this, journey over the past 3 years that you've been running this, can you maybe share a story about who might have been the most helpful person for you on this journey?
There's been many, actually. We have a number of advisors that have helped me over the time to get going. But I've taken elements from all of them, and they've all got their own little stories to tell. I can't think of one that's actually kind of a particular story, but it really is trying to have as many diverse people in the background, kind of giving you advice as the time goes on to actually help you overcome the issues that you've got of that particular day, whether that be a fiscal one, whether that be a legal one, whether that just be an organizational one, and having those different people, whispering these things in your ear, or you can bounce ideas off. That's really helped me an awful way along to the journey as to where we are now.
Do you think then, I suppose, that diversity of kind of support and the people you've been working with, has that helped? Because whilst you're providing a particular type of service, you're providing it to very different customers. The campaigns for the companies are incredibly different, and who their target, maybe investor network will be very different on any given campaign that you're working on.
Yeah. I mean, for example, the one of the ones the two that we've got at the moment, one is HorsePay. So this is the one where it's an equine trading platform where it's also a two-sided marketplace where they've got buyers of horses and sellers of horses. And they've put up a very neat little system to actually have this escrow system. It's not too dissimilar from our own platform in so much that money gets transferred in, it's held in position there until both sides are happy, and then it's released. But so plenty of investors who invest in it thinking that's a damn good idea. But people who are perhaps are users of this service, they are also going, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to be able to buy and sell horses a lot more simply now that I've got this. And so they're investors. So when you're trying to target those people compared to Digitally is a B2B SaaS service, and it's a very different kettle of fish altogether. And so you've probably got many people who are users of the equine trading one, but very few users of the SaaS B2B model for the Digitally are offering. And so the mechanism that you've got to actually try and target those investors and users is very different. And as you're right, Aaron, it's you're creating a very diverse set of mechanisms to target those two different groups as well.
When you think about the future and what's coming down the road now, what excites you about that?
We've only just scratched the surface, really have. I mean, of all investment that goes into startup companies, 99% of it has been done by VCs at the moment, and not by crowdfunding anyway. So we've got a tiny amount that is there, and we've got an absolute open playing field to help young startup companies to get investment into them at the moment. So that really excites me. We've got a very strong environment for startup companies in this country. Enterprise Ireland does an amazing job, getting them to a level. But of course, they need matched funding, they need co-funding, and if the banks aren't doing it, and if if VCs are not doing it, particularly at the moment where they've really circled the wagons to try and look after their own portfolio and not bringing new companies in, or not very many at the moment at least. Then we're one of the other alternatives, and we see a big wide open playing field there, and there's many more opportunities for us to help those companies, and that's what we intend to do.
And can I ask, what do you think? Because you were talking about obviously the growth in since COVID has kicked in. What is your view on what's been driving that? Whereas, because a lot of what you would hear in the market is, I suppose, that angel investment has dried up a bit, and the number of deals are down because people are obviously minding their money or dealing with their own issues. But yet, on the other hand, it looks like obviously through the platform and the campaigns you're working on, that that kind of goes counter to what everything else is being said.
We've tried to look into this, quite a lot over the last 8 months or so, to try and find why is this happening. And we thought that people have got a bit more time, well, even quite a lot more time now. So they're probably not commuting for their hour in the morning and the hour in the evening. So they've got an extra 2 hours of the day. That's one thing. Two, they're not going on holiday. They're not going out to restaurants, and so they're not spending that money. So if you've got a steady job, you're working from home, you've got a bit of income, or still a good income coming into the house, you're not spending as much. So they've got people. There's a lot of disposable income out there for if you've got a safe job. And as I say, time is kind of on people's hands now as well. So we're finding, we think at least, and this is certainly true for the people that we've spoken to about this, that no, they like the idea that they can do this all online. They like the idea that investors don't actually have to pay a fee on this. They've got more time, they've got more money, and they can sit down and watch a webinar about one of the companies for 30 minutes during their lunch hour, and it's very, very easy. Before we used to have, before COVID, we didn't do webinars, or we did one or two, but nothing too much. So we used to have an evening every month or every month and a half or so, and we used to take a room in the Fitzwilliam on Stephen's Green, and we'd invite a load of investors along to hear 4 pitches for the evening. And of course, by the time you've actually got in there, had a glass of wine, said hello to a few people, sat down and listened to the pitches for an hour and a half, gone back home, it's 3 or possibly even 4 hours of an evening. The whole evening's gone. Whereas now you can still do that same exercise, okay, virtually. So it's not, you still don't get the full experience, I suppose, but you can still do that in a lunch hour or just soon after work, and it's very, very easy to do that. And so I think we found that is partly the reason why we've had the success that we have over the last 6 or 8 months.
Yeah, I really like that. And I say that to a lot of the founders I work with, is that use the medium, right? When you are at home doing your pitch, you can plaster all your notes up on the wall or have it up on a screen above and arrange your screens just so it looks like you are making eye contact with a camera, but you're actually reading a script. And you can practice that as much as you want and get your slide work just right. And then for Spark, all of that is imminently reusable. Like you said, it's anytime, any place that they can watch these videos. And what struck me when you just said that was that at lunchtime, watching a video for a half hour to learn about this business and really understand the founder and where they're coming from, that's a big plus, right? And having that be your go-to, that getting it right in the virtual medium means that when we can go back to in-person, you always got the virtual, not as a backup, but as a nice complement to all that. And maybe you never go back to in-person again, just because you found that the virtual is more effective.
And I think it will be complementary. I mean, it is still nice to go and shake someone's hand and look them directly in the eye and get an insight into who they are like that. But nevertheless, it is very handy to have that video played back as well. When you're eating your sandwich at your desk, when you've got a little bit of time, or maybe just after the weather in the evening, you just go, okay, what happened today on that webinar that I missed, and replay it back again. Yep. And having that ability, I think, is going to be something that we don't want to lose, I think, as well. Yeah, we want the nice, softer side of things where we are meeting people again, but I think the virtual thing will still continue to a degree, at least.
Yep. And I kind of see, a case study here for one of the startups that I'm working with. They're developing a B2B2C product. They have no connections whatsoever with angel investors. They have a $300K round that they're looking to raise. Really wouldn't have much interest from any of the VCs in Ireland because it's way too early. No one wants to do a $300K seed round. They're signed up with EI. They'll package up a nice little $600K pre-seed round, if they can piece all this together properly with the match funding. But they really have nowhere to go. And where their first pitch was? some angel group in California, right? It's like, it shouldn't have to be that way. So let's get them over to you, right? Owen, we're at this point in time of the evening where your favorite question.
My favorite question. Chris, tell us something that people wouldn't expect to know about you.
I really had to scratch my head about this and kind of what was I could say. But I moved over here. I obviously from Britain, and you can tell that from my accent, I'm sure. Even you can, Pete. Can you?
No.
Can you not? But anyway, how I got here is slightly interesting, I suppose. It was I was in my late 20s when I came over on a stag weekend, actually, and so we piled over here. And stag weekends in Dublin were quite a regular occurrence, I'm sure, and to the bane of most people here in Ireland, I'm sure, at that time. And we were in Dawson Street, and we were actually in Café on Seine, the original Café on Seine, before it changed because it shut down for a number of years in the early noughties. For a refurb. But anyway, it was, we were in there, and that is where I met my wife. And my wife will, not particularly be very happy that, that now the world knows that we met on a stag weekend. That's a little quirk that I can kind of share with you. But so not many people know that.
That's awesome. Brilliant. No better place. No better place. I was in there a few years ago in the middle of having our house renovated. Or we were building an extension out the back, and was out for some reason, I think with my brother-in-law. We were out for a night before Christmas or something like that in Café on Seine, and saw my builder in there. And I'm like, we had just gone through these heated arguments about delays and all this other stuff. And, within a few minutes, we were just hugging.
Exactly.
And it was like, just hug it out, right? And everything goes water under the bridge in Café on Seine, right?
Absolutely.
So good times. All right. Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been awesome.
Thank you very much.
Nice really to talk to you both, guys.
Really enjoyed it.
Thanks very much indeed.
That does it for this week, folks, and thanks to Chris for opening up his mind to help us figure out why he does what he does. Links and show notes for this episode are on moneyneversleeps.ie, so check us out online. Also, you can subscribe to our Money Never Sleeps newsletter at moneyneversleeps.substack.com. If you're enjoying Money Never Sleeps and want to see it continue, make sure you hop on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review. And don't forget Conan Brophy from Create Sound. He mixes and edits each episode for us and is an excellent media man to get in touch with when you're thinking about launching your own podcast. As for me, I help startups get their products to market, get customers, and finance their vision. You can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or at norioventures.com. And you can follow Owen Fitzgerald on Twitter at OwenFitzgerald9. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!
Money never sleeps, pal.